Hello, everyone, and welcome to Real Property Pros and Cons, episode 13. We are officially teenagers or something, so that means that we'll be more raunchy and inappropriate, maybe. I'm not really sure what that means, but really grateful that we've made it through almost four or over 4 months of shows. So let's just get started and talk about today. Uh, so an article from the Washington Post that came out a couple weeks ago that I was reading talked about a couple that fed nearby ducks and now their HOA is threatening to foreclose. So these people had a condo in Texas. Their child died. They felt like feeding ducks was therapeutic. So they went out and started feeding some ducks that were around their property. And the HOA, being what HOAs are, decided this was not a good thing for them to do. And they kept sending them a bunch of warnings. And they said, you're violating the HOA laws and you're violating the HOA CCNRs. And the couple was like, we want to feed the ducks and we're sad because our child died. And the HOA basically said, we don't care. This is not the right thing. And they levied a whole bunch of fines on them. And now they have to sell their house or have the HOA foreclose on the house because of the amount of fines, which is incredibly sad. So they are obviously suing the HOA and they're saying that it was terrible that they did that. And, but they were actually able to afford a lawyer to represent them in this rather unfortunate and sad lawsuit. And so, one of the things that I started thinking about is it's great that they have the money to afford a lawyer to defend them in this lawsuit. It is less great when people don't have money to hire lawyers to represent them in lawsuits and that sort of thing. So I thought maybe what I could do is bring on somebody who knows something about, no, unfortunately not HOA law, somebody who actually knows something about how or what resources are available to people who maybe can't spend three or four or five, $600 an hour to hire a lawyer when they have really serious issues that might result in their either losing their home or having liens put on their home or anything along those lines. And so I thought, who in my Rolodex can help answer these questions, and who in my Rolodex can help figure out what resources are available to people who need lawyers but can't afford them? And so I reached out to one of my friends who is the guest today. Her name is Lorena Slomanson. She is a really awesome person. I really like her. She's really fun. And also, she works for the Legal Aid Society of San Diego, which means that she can talk to us about services available to people who need lawyers but maybe can't afford them. So that is what we're going to talk about today. And we'll also talk a little bit about, what the Legal Aid Society does, how it can help homeowners and help homeowners protect their rights, because the Legal Aid Society does a lot more than just represent low income litigants. So that is who is going to come on the show after this very brief break. You know what happened? I think I introduced you and nobody heard anything that I just said. Okay. Our guest today is Lorena Slomanson. She is really awesome. Uh, she loves to talk about her organization, the Legal Aid Society of San Diego, and access to justice in our county. Lorena is the development director for the Legal Aid Society of San Diego. She has a BA in Russian and Soviet studies, which I think means if I say privyet, you know what that means. From UCSD, and received her JD from Thomas Jefferson School of Law. She is past president of the San Diego La Raza Lawyers Association, and she served on the San Diego Human Relations Commission. She is a fan of access to justice initiatives, having served as commissioner on the State Bar of California's Commission on Access to Justice, and currently on the County Law Library's Board of Trustees. For a decade, she managed legal aid's unlawful detainer and temporary restraining order clinics in various branches of the San Diego Superior Court. She plays an integral role in advancing the Legal Aid Society's mission of improving lives, advancing justice. She develops donor strategies and supports Legal Aid's mission to provide access to justice for San Diegans. She also enjoys facilitating partnerships with community and corporate leaders. So now, Lorena, thank you so much for being with us. I apologize for some of these vague technical issues. It is always a process, but you know what? This is live, so that just means that we're going to have to go with it, right?
We go with the flow. We go with the flow.
Exactly. Well, Lorena, thank you so much for being a guest with us today.
Thank you. And how do we know each other?
Well, we know each other because I volunteered at that clinic while you were there, and then you moved on to bigger and better things and started trying to get people to pay so that these things existed, as opposed to just doing these things. So that's awesome. So, I think one of the first questions that I want to talk about is, as far as I know, because I am one, lawyers are expensive. They cost a lot of money, and they cost a lot of money because they have a lot of expertise, and it's expensive to get somebody to basically argue what you should be able to argue for yourself. At least that's what lawyers think. But then there are these amazing organizations like the Legal Aid Society that help provide access to justice when people don't have the ability to pay for lawyers. So the first question that I have is, what sort of services does the Legal Aid Society offer, and how can those services benefit and protect the rights of people who own homes, or protect their rights to be able to keep their homes if there are issues, whether they own them or not?
Well, how long is this podcast? I'm just kidding. Let's say that we do a lot of things. We are a proud staff of 190 people, including 90 full-time staff attorneys. We have an annual budget of $20 million, and we have 13 teams. 3 of them are housing teams. Ironically, a third of our county is on Medi-Cal. And so this begs the question, how can people enjoy a good quality of life in San Diego, which is one of the most expensive cities to live in?
That is true.
And I think that the work that we do that affects the social determinants of health, housing, healthcare, food security, preventing homelessness, things like that, are really what we strive to do to improve the quality of lives of San Diegans San Diegans living in poverty and low income. Because living in poverty is one thing, and what is the federal poverty level, and what is the AMI, and yada yada yada. But people who are not living in poverty still struggle. And I used to supervise you as one of our awesome volunteers at the Eviction and Restraining Order Clinic in Chula Vista and downtown. And I would normally tell very frustrated court users that I myself am a lawyer, and I wouldn't be able to afford a lawyer if I needed to pay $500 an hour. So, the struggle is real for many people. And so we really are the bridge to justice. There's a favorite quote of mine, Thurgood Marshall. The law can open doors and even break down walls, but it cannot be the bridge. That job belongs to you and me. So every time that you, Frantz, came to our eviction restraining order clinic. You were the bridge to justice, because people come to the courthouse not knowing, what is this paper that I just got that the sheriff handed me, or I lost my Section 8 voucher, or I just got cut off of SSI or my CalFresh benefits. What do I do? So people really need a trusted source of legal information, and we do direct representation. We do a lot of stuff behind the scenes where we are informing the systems, which are making laws and running the show, and so we can add our expertise into the mix and have a seat at the table to make sure that consumers are not negatively affected by decision makers and lawmakers and our policies.
Yeah. So it sounds like, kind of in terms of my question, it sounds like there's a lot that you do. So you definitely have housing teams that can help with housing related issues, depending whether you're a renter or potentially a homeowner. You have people who can help with other aspects of sort of health related poverty issues. And you do this thing that everybody kind of like holds their nose at, lobbying. And you actually lobby, but instead of lobbying for like large pharmaceutical companies, you lobby or try to influence policies to benefit the people that you serve.
Yes, and because we're a 501c3, we are precluded from lobbying, but we do educate our legislators and our policymakers when they do ask us for our opinion, our advice, or to educate them on issues. During the pandemic, we saw the public struggle with a lot of just understanding what was going on. I mean, I would have like journalists call me asking if they could talk to one of our attorneys to understand how, AB such and such, how does that mingle with the CDC's and then the, Chula Vista City Council's eviction moratorium. So it was something that I like to refer to as untangling the web. So to go back to the housing, yes, we do a lot of housing. We do fair housing enforcement, Fair Housing Act of 1968. We do eviction defense for all low-income tenants in the county who are in evictions. We have an eviction clinic at the Hall of Justice downtown every day. We also help people maintain their housing stabilities by making sure that they keep their subsidies if they are legally entitled to them. We also do family law, immigration, IRS appeals, special education law, SSI appeals. So really wonderful consumer protection work. So we do a wide variety of things, but the intention really is to help people to be the bridge to justice and to provide a security for people that will allow them to live their best lives.
And, I think that's really very, very important. And what I I often say is the reason I went to law school, and the reason why I think maybe many people go to law school, is that I really wanted to understand how our systems work, and our systems were created by lawyers for lawyers,
just like our laws.
Yeah. And so our laws and systems were created by lawyers for lawyers, and if you really want to be able to understand them, you kind of need to be a lawyer.
Which is a bummer, right?
It's a bummer. It is really unfortunate, but I think that's a reality. So legal aid really is trying to help people have access to what they need to understand these really complicated systems that became much more complicated with, COVID. And I actually completely stopped doing anything landlord-tenant related during COVID, in large part because I said it was kind of like playing a game of whack-a-mole with an invisible mallet and with no board, right? Because I really had no idea what was going on. But it's like,
you're not alone.
Some people, you kind of like, if you whack, maybe sometimes you hit the mole and maybe you can kind of figure out what it is. But like otherwise, it was really difficult during that time.
Yeah. I mean, on our website, one could go onto it during the height of the lockdowns and the height of all of these eviction protection measures coming out. People didn't know who to listen to. The CDC, Governor Newsom, the County Board of Supervisors, Mayor Todd Gloria, Mayor Mary Salas. I mean, it really depended. So you could go on our website and it would, say, if you live in Chula Vista, click here. If you live in an unincorporated area of San Diego, click here. If you live in La Mesa, click here. So we were really untangling the web for folks so that they could have a direct resource that was reliable and trustworthy and accurate about what protections they could avail themselves of, or that and for small landlords too, and homeowners, because there were state laws that came out to protect homeowners and mortgage holders.
Yeah, exactly. So, I mean, it wasn't, the eviction moratorium was not there. The the whole pandemic was terrible for everyone.
Correct.
And it was terrible for homeowners, it was terrible for landlords, it was terrible for tenants, it was terrible for mortgage companies. It was just
Correct.
awful for everyone.
Mm-hmm.
And you know, mortgage companies, they're big, they can afford to pay lawyers $500-600 an hour to figure it out for them. Landlords, not necessarily. The vast majority of landlords are not, these crazy rich billionaires
Sure.
who know exactly what to do. A lot of them are people who say, I had $20,000, $30,000. I'm going to stick it in this house and I'll rent it out, and make some money off of it. And they really did not know what was going on. They really didn't understand what they needed to do,
Mm-hmm.
and they had bills to pay. They had mortgages. They have mortgages. They have homeowners insurance. They
Of
have
course.
premiums. They have other mortgages. They have all sorts of bills to pay.
Sure.
And so when the tenant says, I can't pay this $2,500 a month in
Mm-hmm.
rent anymore because I lost my job, that also impacted the homeowner.
Yeah.
And it was really unfortunate that, well, first of all, that people didn't really think about the Legal Aid Society as potentially giving them resources as landlords. But it was also really unfortunate that, nobody understood the resources available to them.
Mm-hmm.
But tenants generally were like, well, you can't get rid of me. And so landlords really did bear the brunt of the not
Mm-hmm.
being able to do anything during the
Sure, which is
pandemic.
which is why I'm glad that the law adjusted to allow for landlords to seek ERAP, the emergency rental, assistance. And,
Right.
we were instrumental in changing the systems of, well, for example, at the beginning, Section 8 voucher holders could not get emergency rental assistance. And we brought this to the attention of some folks, and that changed, and so stuff was hard for everyone. So just because somebody gets a subsidy doesn't mean that they're not hurting in other ways economically. So I think it was really important to, again, untangle the web for landlords and tenants. And so I'm really happy and proud that we were able to step into that space and use our expertise to do so.
Absolutely. I think that's really great. And I mean, other than you, I do know a lot of people who work for legal aid. And, the I think sometimes people have this perception that because it's free or because it's, legal aid, the attorneys don't know what they're doing, or they couldn't do anything better. But especially at the Legal Aid Society, the people that I know who are there are very sharp, they're very smart, they're very good attorneys who have decided for whatever reason that this is where they want to park their career, not necessarily because they couldn't go elsewhere, but because they want to do this work.
Of course, we are mission driven. Our staff is 190 strong of social justice warriors. People come to us, and when I mean people that need our help, but we also have our systems coming to us, the courts, the Department of Managed Healthcare, Medi-Cal, and coming to us and asking us how they can improve the user experience for the consumer, whether it be in healthcare or with county benefits or housing and stuff like that. So it is very significant, and we are highly specialized. So our fair housing team runs the Fair Housing Center for the city and county of San Diego, and they are experts in fair housing law. And so we are all experts in various fields of the law. And our immigration team had to, in the last administration, pivot and understand and train other lawyers on many areas of law that were unscripted, where the federal government was saying one thing, and people would show up to the borders, and the CBP and DHS were like, what? I mean, in other words, there was a lot of confusion and misinformation. So helping people navigate that all is something that I'm that I'm equally proud of that we do.
Absolutely. And I think, as somebody who's a director of development, I think you're probably more aware of everything that goes on in the Legal Aid Society than perhaps a person who is, just volunteering for one team.
Sure.
Because in order to develop, you need to explain to people what are you developing, basically.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we have a $20 million budget, and I'm sorry if I interrupted you, but $20 million budget, people might ask, like, why do you guys need money? And we are 95% funded by the government. And so all levels of government, Congress, state, counties, and various cities. So, when you have money from the government, it's amazing. It's awesome. We are a trusted partner, and municipalities love to partner with us because we have that expertise and we take care of people with dignity and respect and compassion. And so my job immediately became to learn all of what we do, which is vast, and then figure out what the gaps are in our funding. So trying to figure out where we can grow and how we can be most effective. For example, we have a thriving case management practice. And so we have social workers and case managers that are really the glue amongst our teams. When somebody calls us with one legal problem, they typically have 3 to 5, but they're going to deal with the most pressing one that is affecting them at that moment in time, whether it be the loss of public benefits, the potential loss of housing or healthcare. And so as we triage them, as we speak with them, we listen and we will hear other things come up. And so if somebody has an it says that, hey, the IRS is saying that I owe $30,000 in taxes, but I've never paid taxes, then if they're already a client of ours, we can send them to our tax appeals team and they can get help with that. And so, negotiating a settlement if they do owe the money, or getting rid of it if it's an error. Sometimes the government, there's a lot going on. And so, if your name is, if there's another person named Frantz P. Farreau, then there might be some crossover, and you might, there might, be something that affects you because you have a name that's very similar to someone else. And we see this a lot also with our Latino population and our immigrant population. So, yeah.
That is, again, really helpful. And again, when we talk about, homeownership, if you own a home and you have tax debt, then the IRS can put a lien on your home and they can foreclose on it, and they can collect their money that way. And so that helps people protect their housing as well, when you can come in and say, well, they don't owe this $30,000 debt, or maybe, and everybody who owns a house is not necessarily rich.
Correct.
There are people who own houses and they inherited them. There are people who owned houses and they paid very little money for them, and now
Absolutely.
Prop 13 allows them to keep them.
Yeah, and some of those people are vulnerable. We have a case that's near and dear to my heart, and it was a guy named Mr. Unser. Mr. Unser had dementia, and Mr. Unser lived in his own home. He is on a fixed income, Social Security, $11,000 a year. Now, how can Mr. Unser live and own his own home in San Diego when his income is $11,000 per year? Well, it's easy. He inherited his home free and clear from his mother. It was paid off. The taxes on the property were $300 per year. He was scammed into buying some energy efficient loans through the PACE program, Property Assessed Clean Energy, which is an Obama era policy that allows people to use the equity in their home to do home improvements that will benefit the environment, such as solar panels, energy efficient water faucets and such, and toilets and kitchen rebuilds. So there were little to none consumer protection measures built into this infrastructure. And so if you and I want to get a home loan, they're going to ask, what is our ability to pay back? What's our credit score? Yada, yada, yada. Well, they didn't do that with Mr. Unzer. And a contractor showed up at his door one day, knocks on the door, and he is lonely and has dementia. And he went ahead and invited them into his home. And before you knew it, they had sold him 4 different PACE loans, 4 solar panels, a kitchen rebuild when he gets Meals on Wheels and does not even use his kitchen. And as a result of these loans, his annual tax bill skyrocketed from $300 per year to $17,000 per year. Now, keep in mind that his Social Security that he paid into all his life as he worked gives him an $11,000 a year income. So he was no longer able to pay the property taxes, which put him at risk of homelessness because that was going straight to a judicial foreclosure due to non-payment of his tax bill. So we were able to strip those liens. In other words, get those liens taken off, keep him housed, and also educate our state legislatures so that more protective measures for consumers like Mr. Unzer could be enacted through law.
Yeah. And I remember hearing about people with, there's hero loans, there's PACE loans, there were different, similar processes in place that essentially became magical taxes on your property that people didn't know what they were.
Yeah. And magical sources of income for creative people who were using these kind of novel systems to make money off of people who are vulnerable, non-English speakers, older adults. And so it was really tragic. So these are the types of things that we like to keep our eyes on and make an impact because people like Mr. Unzer can basically go unnoticed and people can scam them very easily. I mean, I was on Facebook one day and I saw that somebody tagged me and said maybe legal aid could help. And it was one of Mr. Unzer's neighbors saying, oh my gosh, my neighbor, he's this senior citizen. He has dementia. He's being scammed and he has no one to help him. And he says he doesn't have a lawyer. Well, I responded privately to that gentleman. I said, well, I'm from legal aid and we are in fact representing him, but he has dementia. So sometimes he forgets. Right. And so, he was fully represented that moment and telling his neighbors that he wasn't, and bless their souls, they were on Facebook trying to find help for him. So we were able to tell the neighbor that he was being helped. And so, it's really crazy what can happen to people when nobody's watching. It's the same with evictions and people, in immigration, people can get railroaded very easily.
I think that's absolutely true. And, so I will say 2 things. The first thing that I will say, which I probably should have said at the beginning of this, or maybe I should ask my video editor to put this in the intro and outro, is this general disclaimer that nothing stated here is legal advice. It is just legal information, potentially, or storytelling, and nobody should take this as legal advice. And if you think you have a legal problem, you should absolutely talk to a lawyer immediately, because you probably do. And the second thing is, this story was actually, one, you're not disclosing anything confidential. This has been completed. And there was actually a fairly publicized story in KBBS about this particular gentleman. So want to put that out there so that people who are watching know, of course, Lorena is properly protecting legal aid's clients. Yes. And also this is not illegal advice.
And to our millions of viewers out there, you can hit us up at 877 Legal Aid, 877-534-2524. And we can help in any language. I mean, we have access to all languages. We really want to provide access to the law. So what that means is that we have to meet people where they're at.
Yeah, I think that's really important too. If you go into pick your favorite whatever color shoe firm you would like, maybe people don't speak your language, or maybe they do speak your language, but it's not, a good fit. Legal aid really does try to bring in people who fit and understand the different populations that might be walking into legal aid.
Yeah, sure. We want to offer culturally competent services, language-wise, culturally. We want to reflect the communities that we serve. And so that's really important to us.
Absolutely, I really appreciate that, and I mean, that is one thing that I really appreciated about volunteering when I worked when I volunteered for legal aid, was just how much you really seem to want to create an open, welcoming environment for anybody who came in through the door, and really doing that requires money. I mean, first of all, it requires money, and two, it really requires being able to reach out to a broad group of people who can serve these different communities.
Yeah, yeah. And as these communities walk into the courthouse, nobody wants to go into the courthouse, because they have a problem. That's why they're walking into the courthouse, and then they don't trust the system, whether it be the hospitals, educational systems, the civil system, the criminal system, I mean, all these systems that people have grown to know and distrust because the infrastructure sometimes are a little wonky, and so they don't provide a real comprehensive palette for people. And so when people walk in, as you remember, to our eviction restraining order clinic, which is one of many clinics that we run, they come in pretty stressed out, and they usually leave with a smile because at least they understand what's going on. And knowing your rights is huge. So we know that that's half the battle, and the more you know. So it's very much a know your rights endeavor, and making sure that people understand their rights and responsibilities under the law and how they can protect those. And it's all civil rights, they're based on constitutional law, whether it be federal or state, or laws that interpret our constitutions. But we are very much a social justice law firm and civil rights defender.
Yeah, I think that's really, really important. And so I guess one of the questions that I have also is, how do you find, or what do you see legal aid doing to sort of, I was going to say to achieve social justice, but that's not a very good question. To really be able to appeal to a broad segment of the population and really protect the interests of everybody involved in the system.
Sure. Well, let's take Mr. Unser, who I just referenced. Let's take Mr. Unser, an older gentleman who is of European descent and grew up here, knows the system, and got scammed. So what happens to folks who are not so savvy, or who don't speak the language, or who might have an intellectual or physical disability that might cause them to be more vulnerable? All of us are at risk of potentially acquiring dementia one day, which means all of us are at risk of getting scammed, and so we want to quash that where we see it. All of us need adequate education. All of us need adequate health care. All of us need food security and nutritional food. So these are things that are universal, that apply to all people, and that nobody should be missing out on because of the size of their pocket, basically, or pocketbook, wallet. Yeah. My grandpa used to call it pocketbook. I'm a pocketbook.
Yeah, exactly.
He's old school.
Yeah, absolutely. And you make a good point. So, and the other question that I have is, what do you, on some level, both because of my volunteer experience with legal aid and also my general experience as a lawyer, being able to find access to the services that are available often requires a certain amount of savvy as well. Yes. So it's not just like, okay, there's legal aid, it's great, we're going to help you. It's also, okay, do you know that there's legal aid? Who has access to legal aid?
What questions to ask, where to look.
Exactly.
If you Google something, I'm being evicted, what do I do? What do you think is going to happen? Well, the people that have paid for their SEO to be like, to have them as the first law firm that shows up for eviction defense, they're going to be like, justice for tenants. And so, we have to be wary when we're thinking of what consumers are exposed to and what is being pushed upon them, and where can they go? Who can they trust? This is why I've been on the county law library board for over 10 years and why I'm really a big fan of it. Because the law library's tagline is the law made public. And the law should be public. The law shouldn't be a private thing. It shouldn't be accessible to only people who have a lot of money. When I was in high school, I watched the O.J. Simpson trial just like everyone else. And I saw him not convicted in the criminal case. And then I saw him found liable in the civil case. And how is that? And so, we all saw his dream team and contemplate how much that must have cost. And we realize that not everybody has access to that. Two people walking into a courthouse with the same set of facts in front of the same judge who's applying the same law should not have different outcomes. And I think that's a universal concept,
Yeah, I think that's absolutely true. And I also think that that is not the case. But what does legal aid do in order to kind of help people know that these services are available? So how can people, become aware of legal aid and what legal aid does?
Sure. Thanks for asking. Well, you can find us on the internet, the interwebs, at lassd.org. That's Legal Aid Society of San Diego.org, lassd.org. We're also reachable by phone. We have a fabulous intake team. They field calls from throughout the county all day, hundreds of them. And that is 877 Legal Aid, which is 877-534-2524. We have a TTY line, which you'll be able to find if you go onto our website at lassd.org. We do a lot of outreach through schools, community events, to try to reach folks to make sure that they know that we exist. We get referrals from our vast network of community partners. If one calls 211, which is the countywide social service network that I can call on my phone and say 211, and it rings and somebody answers and I say, hey, I just lost my SSI benefits. What do I do? We are the number one referral for free legal services for 211. Social workers, teachers, case managers at hospitals. We get people from all sources, and those are the people who are looking out for their clientele or their communities. So we worry too about people who might not have somebody to help them. What about people who are like say shut-ins and maybe a little older? So we engage with different partners and find funding to help communities that are our most vulnerable. Half of our SSI clients are unsheltered, and we have an SSI for Kids team. They are foster youth, unsheltered youth, and youth who are otherwise having physical or intellectual disabilities that preclude them from living the normal life that you and I enjoyed, but with a little bit of help. And that's equity. We provide equity so that that family can focus on what they need to focus on and not worry about the legal mumbo jumbo that they don't understand, or the complex nature of any civil case or any system. The government systems are very hard for people to navigate. And so we really enjoy being that bridge and doing the hand-holding to get people to their goals, because it is statistically proven that if someone needs to navigate a civil case on their own, that more likely than not, they are going to just throw up their hands and give up at a certain point along the way, because it's very hard to, we know that as lawyers, we know that it's really hard to get to the end of a case and see it through and reach a goal that's favorable, right?
I mean, yes. The joke that I always like to make is that doctors know how to kill you and lawyers know how to make you wish you were dead. And that is the litigation process.
I do love a good lawyer joke, yes.
But I mean, that is the litigation process. You bury somebody in paperwork until the end of their life, and you never get a resolution, which is often the strategy for a defendant.
Yeah, well, I've been to conferences where they have panels on this particular subject of giving up, because there are studies that show that if someone has to navigate that system on his or her own, they will get to a point where they just give up and say, you know what, let the chips fall where they may. But if I am going to have to go through, vacate, like do a motion to vacate a default judgment on my own, it is procedurally complex, and I may or may not be able to navigate all of the ins and outs of litigation on my own. So, the law is not as user friendly as we would want it to be, right? And the courts are not either. And so Legal Aid Society of San Diego gets in there so that the law and the courts can become more accessible to the public and more user friendly.
Yeah, I think that what you actually said is a really interesting point, because legal aid, you do provide direct representation, like to people like Mr. Unger. Was it Unger?
Unzer?
Mr. Unzer.
Mm-hmm.
But I think the other thing that you provide are self-help clinics, just to help people understand, like, there is a process. You can do this.
Yes, correct.
There are things that you can do on your own.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Evictions, restraining order, and that's civil restraining orders, elder abuse restraining orders, domestic violence restraining orders, gender marker and name change, conservatorship, civil appeals, tax clinic, family law, immigration. So we do have a lot of offerings in public spaces. Our bankruptcy clinic in the bankruptcy court is fabulous. And we have wonderful volunteers. We host about 200 volunteers per year. And these folks help us expand our capacity. So you were one of those folks that really help us do more good work than we would otherwise be able to do.
Yes. And as a personal shout out, just for legal aid in general, I am not really an as active a volunteer anymore, because I am not a volunteer, or I'm not as active a volunteer with legal aid as I was before. However, one of the things that I will say is that being a volunteer really gave me an opportunity to become aware of an area of the law that I was not familiar with and that I did not know about, in a space that was safe, because
Yes.
I had people like the people at the clinic, like you, like some other people who really were able to kind of walk me through and help me understand, so that now when I actually practice as a landlord tenant attorney with paying clients, I can feel comfortable that I know what I'm doing and what the risks are. So,
it's wonderful.
And I think that's a really important shout out to the Legal Aid Society generally, is that it's not a one-way street. The Legal Aid Society really does, try to obviously help people and help certain members of the population. But then when you actually volunteer for an organization like the Legal Aid Society, it really does help broaden your knowledge and your understanding of the law as an attorney, for instance, or as a...
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, we have tons, as you know, of law students who come and college students who come to volunteer for us. And it's a really wonderful opportunity for them to understand the law and how it works in the real world, and to practice and hone those client relationship skills that they are building, so that they know how to explain things to folks in a way that's understandable, so that they understand. That's the most important thing. And we do this in a very compassionate, dignified way. And we really, our bottom line as a law firm is not money, it's people and results. And so we are lucky to be funded by the government and by philanthropy in order to do this work. And, like I said, the needs will never be met, unfortunately. And so as long as there is a great need, legal aid will continue to exist and be a much needed service.
Yes, I think that's a really great comment. And also, just kind of looking at the time, we have a couple of viewer questions. So I will pick a couple of them and ask them right after this segment, Ask the Pro on the show. By the way, I want to give a shout out again to my video guy, Hunter Haddock, who fixed it and changed it. So now we have a much more appropriate intro for this segment. Ask the Pro on the show. Because really, all of the questions are directed at the pro and never directed at me.
Hey, I get to be a pro.
Yes, you get to be a pro. So the first question is kind of an interesting question. Do you think that people should reach out to legal aid even if they know they don't qualify for the services?
Yes. Like I mentioned, we have a vast network of community partners. And so we can refer folks to other organizations or to the county bar if they are looking for a lawyer in an area in which we do not practice, like estate planning or employment law. And so I think that people should feel comfortable reaching out to us, even if they know they won't qualify for legal aid. And, one way to approach it also is to go onto our website at lassd.org to see what it is that we offer.
Yes. I think that's really helpful. And reaching out to legal aid, again, it might be that the legal aid can't help you specifically because you don't have, you have too much income or something like that. But maybe you can go to one of the clinics too, at one of the self-help clinics, and somebody can help you,
Yes.
figure it out that way.
Yes, because most of our clinics, Franz, do not have income limitations, requirements, or criteria. And so we can help folks at all levels of income with those conservatorships, with the gender marker name change, the evictions, and the restraining orders, which are all very important things to keep people stable and improve their quality of life.
Absolutely. So the second question that somebody asked is, are there other similar service providers in San Diego? So I guess, are there other service providers similar to legal aid in San Diego?
Yeah, so we are a free legal service provider, much like the public defender, for example, who does only criminal cases, and we only do civil cases. There are the landscape in San Diego is very robust. We have other civil legal aid, free legal service providers. We also have such as Catholic Charities, for example. We also have organizations like Casa Cornelia, who are very niche-y. In other words, they are providing free legal services in the area of immigration law. And even within that, they are focusing on asylum seekers, unaccompanied minors, and victims of domestic violence. So the landscape is pretty robust. You also have, ACLU, which protects our First Amendment right to speech, and other important constitutional things. And at the end of the day, we are a civil rights law firm, and we are protecting people's civil rights. And so there are other organizations that do that stuff, and I love them all. Our sister organization, San Diego Volunteer Lawyer Project, is fabulous. And so, free legal services in San Diego, normally if you Google that, you're going to find a pretty good offering. Employee Rights Center helps folks with employment questions, and the labor commissioner for the state also helps people who have not gotten their last check or have some type of claim against their employer. So there are ways where people can get help without paying. And to your point from earlier, these are excellent services. We're highly trained. People that work for these systems and organizations do it because we choose to, because we are committed to access to justice and our mission of being that bridge to justice.
Yeah. And I also think you mentioned the Public Defender's Office, which Legal Aid Society does not do at all. You don't think you do anything criminal.
Correct. We are legal. We work on civil cases only. So housing, healthcare, family law, immigration, things that are not criminal in nature.
Right. But one of the things I was going to say is that, if you are O.J. Simpson and you have lots of money and a very complex case, shall we say, or you're a white collar criminal and you're facing like very complex financial crimes, yes, it is worth it to pay for a very expensive lawyer. One, because very expensive lawyers tend to do these sorts of things all the time. And two, because it is very likely that you're going to get a better outcome. In other circumstances, the volume of cases that lawyers who are versed or who work for these types of law firms do, for example, the Public Defender's Office, if you look at the caseload of a public defender, it is it's obscene, the number of cases that they
have. Which goes to show that the need is humongous.
It's real.
Yeah.
And also, because they do so many cases, they get really good at doing them. And so they can often provide much better advice than the very expensive $500 an hour DUI attorney who only does maybe like one DUI trial a year, who really might not know, what's going on. So there might be some benefit to not mortgaging your house to pay hundreds of thousands of dollars to a DUI attorney when you qualify for a public defender. Because you might get just as good, if not better, an outcome by going to the public defender's office.
And I think that's the challenge for folks. I regularly get questions like, do I need a lawyer or not? And, nobody wants to hear the very lawyerly answer of it depends, but it does depend. Everything depends. Every case is different. Every human's different. Every litigant's different. And, one day, hopefully we achieve equity in the law so that all, people who are accessing the court systems will achieve the same result under the same laws with the same set of facts. And that's really a goal, I think, that we're really here to level the playing field, provide equity. So, your chances of achieving success in the courtroom are exponentially, they skyrocket when you have a legal advocate.
Yes. If only because legal advocates understand how to navigate the system, and are also dispassionate. So they're not invested in the outcome. They just will go through and get the result that you want.
Yes, and also us lawyers we're cold-hearted.
Cold-hearted people who just want to get outcomes. And actually, this is actually also very helpful or very useful question, I'm sure, is if somebody wants to support legal aid, can they volunteer without being a lawyer?
So sometimes. So people can go onto our website and they can fill out a form to volunteer. Another way that people frequently support us is through financial support. So if you go to our legal aid page, or if you just Google Legal Aid Society of San Diego and donate, you will go to our donations page and you can put us in your will. You can give us stock options. You can donate through PayPal, send a check. There are many ways that one could support legal aid other than volunteering. So thank you for asking.
And also, if you would like to give to legal aid, particularly monetarily, I am sure that legal aid is willing to accept your support.
We are. The more financial support that we enjoy, the more we're able to do of our awesome work. This year we are celebrating a centennial, and we're going to have a gala in November. And that's really exciting for us because we're celebrating 100 years of justice in San Diego. In 1919, at the Spreckles Theater in downtown on Broadway, there was one guy who was the public attorney. That guy was funded by another guy who died in 1918. During World War I, he died of pneumonia in the Midwest. He left $20,000 in his will, which is the equivalent to about $300,000 today, so that the county bar would choose or select by essay, by a written competition, one person who would be the public attorney for San Diego. At that time, there were about 75,000 residents in San Diego. Now there are a bit more, but we've also grown to a staff of 190. So we've come a long way, and we're very excited to celebrate this at the historic U.S. Grand Hotel in November. And, we have a lot of people who have been part of our legal aid family over the last 100 years, who are powerhouses and iconic in the legal community and beyond. And so we really want to celebrate them, but we really want to celebrate to our clients who empower, and the lives that we have changed. And so we're really excited to celebrate this year. We were going to do it 2 years ago, but due to COVID, we had to cancel. So this is a way that we are engaging with our philanthropic community, and we are making great strides. And, who doesn't love a party? But really, it's a party with a purpose. We want to just expand our capacity and do more of what we do. So thank you for asking me about that.
Absolutely. And you know what? I think, given everything that's happened in COVID in the last 2 years and all of, I think we can just kind of pencil those years out and just say they didn't happen. Um, and there has actually been tremendous suffering, and there's a lot that has happened. But I think that it's important to be able to truly celebrate the things that we should have celebrated in 2020 or 2019, uh, moving forward, because those are things worth celebrating.
Yeah, and what I'm doing is I'm gonna put my email in my name here so that folks can reach out to me if they are interested in learning more about volunteer and or supporting us with various types of ways.
Correct. Thank you very much for doing that. And we also have all of this wonderful information. We have 1877 Legal Aid, lassd.org, and Lorena at lassd.org if you want to donate. I've known Lorena for a really long time. She's also just really fun to talk to, incredibly knowledgeable. I did not mention anything about people that she is related to, but somebody that she's related to wrote a very famous Civ Pro textbook. So that's really awesome.
International law textbook.
And international law textbook. So she's extremely knowledgeable. She's a very good lawyer. She's been a very good friend, and I really appreciate that you came and talked on our show. And I really want to make sure that this show is a space where people can get resources and get information and learn things that they would not have learned otherwise. And that is my goal. And to help people protect the property rights and have resources to protect the property rights and understand the rights that they have, as either property owners or renters or what have you. And that's why I brought you on to Real Property Pros and Cons, because both you and Legal Aid are pros in the space of real property, and we really appreciate all of the work that you do. And I appreciate that you have been our guest.
Spasibo, mój drug. That means thank you, my friend, in Russian, since we are both Russophiles. And yes, I want to, well, why not?
Yeah, exactly.
I just made you a Russophile. But I really want to thank you for getting this information out through your podcast. I really appreciate it. And it was really a pleasure to be here with you tonight. And thank you for all you do, Frantz, to support Legal Aid Society of San Diego.
Absolutely. Thank you very much. And I will see you all next week with another Real Property Pro. Bye-bye.
Bye.